Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Digital Interpretation Symposium. My name is Kimon Keramidas. I'm the Assistant Professor and Director of the Digital Media Lab here at the Bard Graduate Center. And this symposium is the end result of a lot of work that we've been doing here now for 6 years at the Bard Graduate Center, in our Digital Media Lab, in our Focus Gallery, in our main gallery exhibitions. And so we're going to talk about a lot of different ways that digital media impact the way we perceive the gallery experience, and also think about how digital media have grown out in museums in different ways. Before we start doing that, I just wanted to say some thank yous. First, I wanted to thank Director Susan Weber, who founded the BGC 22 years ago, I believe, and has provided us here with a phenomenal platform to experiment with academic research and exhibition design and display in a really innovative and unique way. And I find that my time here has been an interesting discovery of the ways that the BGC can powerfully turn academic work into more public intellectualism. Secondarily, I would like to thank Dean Peter Miller, who encourages these types of symposia and provides a lot of support for the faculty and staff to gather our speakers and the community to talk about very important topics to our institution. I also want to thank Dean Elena Pinto-Simon and Alina Bloch from our academic programs, who do a phenomenal job organizing these events. You'll see we have our wonderful food. The day is going to be very well scheduled. And also our art department, tech department, and facilities staff, who do the great job making the posters, publicizing our work, recording the symposia so that you can see them later on YouTube or live stream them for everyone who's out there right now. And the facilities staff do a great job setting up and making our transition from one space to another seamless. The foundation of a lot of the digital thought we do at the Bard Graduate Center started 6 years ago when we expanded into this building that you're sitting in. There are two townhouses that were joined into a single larger building for academic programs. And part of that expansion was the building of a digital media lab. And so for 6 years, we've been experimenting with ways that digital technology can improve the quality and innovation in research for faculty, staff, and students. And it's been a phenomenal journey. We've done a variety of different projects where we've built an oral history archive. We've done some really interesting projects with our courses. We've done some digital publications, but the one place that has really shown the strongest, because of the high-level professionalism of our exhibitions, is the ways that we've been experimenting with digital media in our gallery spaces, and in particular the Focus Gallery project, which I'll talk about more in detail later. And those interactives, those digital catalogs, those digital websites that we've produced out of the Focus Gallery have really been an inspirational point for our entire community for thinking about the way that we can take objects and material culture, traditional text-based research, spatial research, and take it one step further and add to it a digital dimension, and really interrogate not only how we write narratives, but how we can create nonlinear user-driven narratives, which are becoming more and more common, not only in gallery spaces, but across all the ways we interact with culture, particularly because of the development of the internet. So the Digital Media Lab has been a fun space, as well as kind of a powerful, innovative space. And in the morning, we're going to see a couple of speakers from outside institutions, but in the afternoon, we'll be able to hear both myself and Professor David Jaffe, who's in the back of the room, talk about projects that have come out of the Digital Media Lab, that have come out of our Focus Gallery project, and show the type of work that our students and faculty are doing. To give a little more detail about the Focus Gallery project, it was started as the same time when we moved into this new building. It's now 6 years old as far as process. I think it's been 5 years old since we've been having 2 exhibitions a year. And it's a very important part of our curriculum. It's faculty-based research projects that, rather than manifesting themselves in traditional research paper or journal articles, end up going into a 20-foot by 20-foot gallery. And it forces the faculty to be bilingual, to think not only in the traditional textual patterns of research, but also in spatial patterns. They're very practical and process-oriented ways of teaching and learning, which is particularly valuable for getting our students the type of professional development that is useful for museums or anywhere else that they might work coming out of here. And because of the creative aspect of it, it's, like I said before, been a good place to lodge the digital in. So the focus gallery projects take place over 2 to 3 years. They usually involve two courses where students are both working on research and analysis of objects, and also involved in exhibition design, prototyping digital media projects, where possible, working on publication with professors and staff. And it's not only a valuable way for us to do work, but a great draw for our students to come here because of its unique positioning of objects and exhibition work and intellectual research. So connected to all that is a lot of trends that have been happening in digital in the museum at large. And to be completely honest, when I started the BGC, I didn't know a lot about museums, and it's been really fascinating to enter into this field and think about how the digital is changing museums, which are institutions that tend to be a little more orthodox. They're based in kind of a maintenance of tradition, and they're very deliberate in the choices and changes. So watching the changes in museums is an interesting parallel to how things are changing in society. Sometimes that deliberation is good. Rather than following trends and fads, the museums are very careful in picking the things that they may be long-standing. Sometimes that orthodoxy can be bad, and that it takes a long time for obviously beneficial digital trends to penetrate into the institutions. So that's something that is part of digital interpretation, which we'll speak specifically, but I also wanted to talk about how it influences museums in a large sense. So possibly the longest standing technological digital part of museums have been the back-end information structures, databases, collection management systems. And that's an interesting place where we've seen change recently, where large institutions like the Met would have multiple collection systems that weren't talking to each other, kind of counter to the nature of digital information. But even those systems are now being brought together into unified databases, and then those databases are being shared with the public in a way that they weren't previously before, giving a lot more access to the information and material that are in these remarkable repositories. Probably the second place where the digital manifested itself in the museums was in the creation of websites post 1994 and with the birth of the internet. And it's been interesting to see a trajectory of how museums position their voice, how they put themselves on a certain type of medium space in the web, and how they create a different type of character than they may even in their space. And the websites are, of course, certainly important for marketing and reaching out to public communities. In relation to that, there's been an expansion into social media and Web 2.0 technologies, which have further expanded museum presence in the digital realm, and asked even more complex questions about the direction of discourse. Are museums just singularly putting out information, or are they receiving information from their communities? How is that dialogue occurring? How can digital technologies allow for that? There are both things like managing a Facebook page or a Twitter feed, but also projects like the Brooklyn Museum's tagging, where you actually allow people who come to the museum or come to the museum's website to contribute to the informational databases about the objects. So these are all interesting expansions in the way the museums have seen the new technologies and appropriated them. And I think for myself, and I think for a lot of what we do in the Focus Gallery, the most interesting question is how these digital devices then make their way into the gallery. The gallery is probably the most sacred part of the museum experience, sacred in both a great and a questionable way. We could spend a long time breaking down that word usually. And there's been both an excitement and then a concern about how these devices, whether they're mobile in your palm of your hand or they're a touch screen or a big monitor, how they impact the way we interact with the objects, which have for so long been the important part of the museum experience. And these interpretive strategies take a lot of thoughtfulness. They take a lot of questions about intuitiveness or user friendliness of these devices. What can you expect of a user going into a gallery space? How do you fracture an expectation when you enter a gallery space by using these digital devices? And how do you, in that fracturing, have to re-educate gallery patrons to make sure that they're having the type of narrative and didactic experience you want them to have, but doing so in a non-forceful way? There are a lot of really open, big questions, and I think the area where the digital museum realm is least kind of completely convinced on how to do it best, and that makes it an exciting place to experiment, and it'll be an exciting topic to talk about today. And it happens in a number of ways. So not only in the galleries as far as interpretive materials, but also in catalogs that follow along. And how do you take the material that is in the space that would usually go into a book, but put it into catalog format? And then how can you bring that catalog material back into the space because of its more digital mobility? How do you create specific exhibition websites that support the way that materials are laid out in the gallery, and how are those exhibition websites sometimes tied back also, like the catalog, into the gallery experience, and how can you make the material online accessible in the physical space, and what is the relationship of the physical with the kind of virtual and digital? And then lastly, these really specific device-based experiences. We've been playing around with the new show interface experience we've opened with a responsive web app, which you can both go online on your really big desktop or you can look at it on your iPad. But if you're in the gallery space, you have a different interface that allows you to use a keypad to enter information based on each object in the space so that it becomes the kind of gallery guide. So how do you make these types of design decisions to support the material both externally and internally all at the same time? So we're going to talk about all that stuff today, hopefully. And we both have, like I said before, two fabulous external speakers, Coven Smith from the Blanton Museum and Jennifer Foley from the Cleveland Museum of Art, talking about the way institutions adapt and also in larger museums, how do you deal with traffic flow and the kind of technical problems that these digital technologies, which are very new and also often uncertain in their ability to work in the particular spaces we have. And then we're going to go have a break for lunch, and after lunch, myself and Professor David Jaffe are going to talk about the decisions we made in our Focus Gallery projects and how they are a culmination of a few years of work thinking about these types of projects and the particular interest the Bard Graduate Center has in doing this type of work. Then when the two of us are finished, we're going to take a short coffee break. And we're going to have an open panel discussion, which is going to include the four of us I just mentioned and also speakers from yesterday's symposium, which is part of a larger two-day conversation about the way that digital technologies and interpretation are important in the gallery space.